Blues fans, I don't even know what to say. I'm going to have to say some things, though, because we're live and we're talking about just a gut-wrenching, heartbreaking ending to the 2024-2025 season for the St. Louis Blues. This one stings, hurts, roller coaster of emotions, crazy season. Didn't even think the team would make the playoffs. Then they do. They're facing the number 1 seed. Take them to a game 7 on the road and lose in double overtime after leading 3-1 with 2 minutes or so to go, leading 3-2 with 3 seconds to go, and the Jets score, sending it to overtime. And man, I've been in St. Louis since 2008, so it's 2025. Almost exactly 17 years I've been here. I'm trying to think of a worse loss for our local sports teams. I can't think of one. I was there for Michael Wacha against the Giants in the NLCS, but I didn't think the Cardinals were going to win that game. For the Blues to play so well, to be literally not even 3 seconds away from advancing to the second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs, to lose like that. I want to hear from you all. What do you think of the season? What do you think of the series? What do you think of the finish? I'm not going to lie to you. I had a bad feeling going into that game, right? It wasn't like the Blues didn't have a chance. I was on X. I was talking to folks, asking them their confidence level, and I was around about a 40 out of 100, 40-60, leaning the way of the Winnipeg Jets. The reason for that is because this was just straight up for 2 weeks a home ice series. All 7 games. The home team won every single game. By the way, Connor Hellebuyck, who played so terribly on the road, he was different at home. And look, give that dude a lot of credit. He was pulled from every game in St. Louis. All 3 games. Think about that mentally. And then terrible start for Connor Hellebuyck. I'm not saying it was all his fault in game 7, but the Blues go ahead super quick, go up 2-0 very, very early. Let me check exactly when that was. So the Blues, they get that goal where Jordan Kyrou can just swat it in there, $1:10 into the game. So 1 minute in, Connor Hellebuyck, who you think is probably mentally domed up a little bit, gets something really bad happening 1:10 in. The Blues score again. Matthew Joseph scores 7:16 into the first period. So the Blues have a fantastic first period. And the Blues, after 2, are up 3-1. But Connor Hellebuyck, look, he didn't fold. If you're watching that game, I was watching the Turner broadcast, and early on there, they were talking about, do you pull Hellebuyck? And I can't remember if it was right after the first goal, if it was after the second goal, but the broadcast was discussing the fact that, look, if there's another goal, you probably got to pull this guy. So give Connor Hellebuyck all of the credit in the world after just going through the emotional, mental roller coaster of all those games, getting pulled 3 times, early goals in game 7. He rights the ship. He's really, really good. But also the team game. This was more about the team game for the Jets. The Jets freaking dominated the overtime periods. Absolutely dominated the overtime periods. When you're watching that, I was just sitting thinking, any second here, the Blues are going to lose this game. I had a bad feeling going into the game, and then I think it's just obvious. You have a horrible feeling. When you talk about momentum and you're on the road and it's a whiteout, and that barn, they were tense, right? They were waiting for something bad to happen until a couple good things happen. Then all of a sudden they're behind you. And the Jets played so much better than the Blues in the overtime periods. Let's look at the stats, by the way. Just overall, Look, there were some games where the Blues played really well and lost. I thought that game one, the Blues played really well, except for the third period. But a lot of the score sheet statistics, the Blues were better in some of these games, even if they lost. I'm talking about game one. I'm not saying they played better than the Jets in game one, but it was so dang close. But let's just look at the stats real quick. I mean, shots. Jets outshoot the Blues 47-29. Just absolutely dominate them in shots, especially in the overtime periods. Hits. Jets with 73, Blues with 49. Not close. Blues were better on the faceoff dot, about 56-44. Okay. On the power play, Jets did score 1 out of 2. Blues only got the one power play. Block shots, Blues up 29-24. Giveaways, Blues 33. They had 33 giveaways. The Jets had 22. But the Jets just played better. They played better, especially when it mattered. I mean, I don't know what you guys were thinking, but it's almost impossible to come back from what happened to the Blues in the last 2 minutes or so of that game in regulation. You're up 3-1. And by the way, Jordan Binnington played pretty dang well, don't you think? I mean, of all those goals, and if you think about the goals throughout the series, now I keep going back to game one. For some reason, that one's really stuck in my head as well. There were some high-end plays there at the end where the Jets scored just some legitimate high-end talent goals. But if you think back through this series, especially game 7, I mean, Jordan Binnington, almost everything that went in there, deflected, just perfect redirects. I think Jordan Binnington played really, really well. So did Connor Hellebuck. But to me, this one was about the team game, where the Jets just straight up outplayed the Blues when it mattered in the overtime periods. And also, this has been a bugaboo for the Blues all season long. When it got to be 6-on-5, when the Jets pulled Hellebuck at the end of regulation there and just scored bing, bang twice in the last couple minutes, including the game-tying goal with less than 3 seconds to go. So you had less than 2 minutes. You had the 3-2 goal that was at 18:04, and then technically 19:57, but less than 3 seconds. Cole Perfetti scores that goal to tie it up 3-3, and it's just, I mean, come on, guys. You had to have a terrible feeling when that happened. To lose all the momentum, you're on the road, to go to overtime. I almost thought this was going to be one of those games where the Jets come out immediately in overtime and just score and it's over. But credit the Blues to play so tough. They played tough. They didn't play well in the overtime periods. They played tough, but the Jets were just so much better than the Blues. And you don't win a game like that. Can you remember a game where you give up the lead in heartbreaking fashion with 3 seconds to go and you come back in a big spot and still win the game? I don't have the greatest memory. I can't think of any games like that. So, look, overall, a great season for the Blues, or a really good season. It's hard to focus on that day after. I don't even know if we should, right? Because it's interesting. When I was on X asking people their confidence level, a lot of people said, you know what? If they win, it's great. If they lose, it's still a hell of a season. But I don't think you can't think about that right now with the way they lost, right? If they played well, but they lost 4-3 in regulation and the Jets played better the whole game, that one much easier to swallow. When you lose 4-3 in double overtime, when you at least control the game for almost the entirety of regulation, for 58 minutes, essentially, you have a 2-goal lead. And even for 59 minutes and frickin' 57 seconds, you're leading that game and you give it up like that. Look, I mean, the Blues will be able to come back from it. This is a team that I think is going to be good in the future. But the other part is the progress in professional sports, it's not always linear, right? I mean, the Blues after the Four Nations tournament were so good. 12-game winning streak, went from a team that most people didn't think was going to even make the playoffs to a playoff team playing the number 1 seed with a great chance to beat them. They had an absolutely great chance to beat them. I would think the Blues are going to be better next year. But that doesn't mean the Blues are going to win a playoff series. You could have a bad matchup in the first round. You could play well, go against a better team. You could run into a really hot goalie. I think the Blues are going to be better next season. That doesn't mean they're going to win a playoff series. I do think if you're a Blues fan, you got to be excited, though. It sure as hell seems like you have the right coach in Jim Montgomery. You have a lot of good pieces in place. You have a good core. You have Robert Thomas. You have Jordan Kyrou. Obviously, Parayko's getting older, but he's not super old. So you got to be happy and excited about the future. Again, Monty is the guy for the job, you got to think. But that doesn't mean that the Blues are going to necessarily go on a run next year. I hope they do. It's going to be a very interesting offseason with some additions and subtractions. Doug Armstrong has the chance to make this team better. I have confidence that he will. Also, give credit to Doug Armstrong. I remember a couple years ago, he basically said, as he's thinking about eventually moving on, you have Alexander Steen to take over his spot in a few years, whenever that officially happens. But I remember Doug Armstrong saying, look, you want to leave a place better than when you got there. And clearly, Doug Armstrong puts together the team that wins the Cup in 2019. But the last couple of years, you're thinking, okay, are the Blues in a great spot? They hadn't made the playoffs the last couple of years. Well, now the Blues, I think, are in a very good spot. Doug Armstrong has them set up for success for the foreseeable future. Jim Montgomery, it sure as heck seems like, is the right person for the job. And we can discuss all of this, though, in the coming weeks, months, whatever it is. But man, to lose in that fashion, folks, is just so brutal. I don't have to tell you. It's so brutal. You almost wish, you don't wish, okay, you would have got swept. I mean, there were fun games. Hockey playoffs, though, it's so much fun in the city. Just knowing if the Blues would have won, you had at least another couple weeks of fun. You're kind of scheduling your days and your nights around watching the games. Man, to be that freaking close. And I still think, look, the Blues could have went on a run, right? They could have beat the Stars. I don't know. I'm not saying they would have, but to think the Blues just would have been one and done. And I know there were all these comparisons to 2019. Why not make those comparisons? Why couldn't the Blues go on a deep run? You don't have that many opportunities. Again, the Blues may be better next year. They could still lose in the first round of the playoffs. They could match up against somebody really, really good in the first round. Man, what a brutal loss. What a brutal ending. That goes up there with some of the worst, obviously, in St. Louis history. It's not Denkinger. That was the World Series. You tell me, guys, what is it? What is it in terms of the rankings? It's so fresh right now. I can't think of a worse loss since I've been here, since 2008. I mean, it wasn't the World Series. It wasn't the Stanley Cup final. I mean, we could talk about the hand pass, but it also matters how things end up. Like anything bad that happened in 2019, you don't care about. You don't talk about because the Blues won the Stanley Cup, obviously. For it to end like that, the finality, just absolutely brutal. Also, guys, you see here, Triad Bank, my great sponsor, been a sponsor for 4 or 5 years, been going there for 5 years. Best thing I ever did for my rental property business, taking all my commercial loans from a big national bank that didn't care about me, to Triad Bank, a local bank. And look, you see that logo? Celebrating 20 years, Triad Bank. 20 years, 2005 to 2025. They have retail banking as well. My guy, Matthew Tobin, he can help you out. I have many loans with Triad Bank. And again, the customer service is top-notch. Best thing I ever did for my rental property business. Heading on over to Frontenac and Triad Bank. St. Louis Lawn Care, St. Louis Equipment, my guy, Tim Jankerson. St. Louis Lawn Care, been cutting my grass for a good, 4 or 5 years, whatever it is. They do it all, though. They're going to redo a bunch of my trees and flower beds with some boxwoods, bring them in, trim them. They're going to plant a big juniper where I'm missing one right in the back here for some privacy. Is it arborvitae? I don't know how to pronounce it, but they're going to bring a bunch of those in. My point is they do it all. St. Louis Lawn Care, they'll cut your grass. I got the mulch. The mulch looks great. And then anything for bringing in, like I said, the trees, trimming any type of bushes, whatever you got in your front yard, they do all that. And then St. Louis Equipment. Get your mower repaired, buy a new mower. They have all the big time mowers out there, right? All the great brands. I bought a Husqvarna blower over there, which is fantastic, super powerful. I bought a Crest battery operated trimmer. Also, you think batteries, oh, maybe not that powerful? This thing freaking super powerful. So they had everything. St. Louis Equipment, St. Louis Lawn Care, my guy, Tim Jenkerson. We have somebody in the chat here, Joey Nichols says, total meltdown. Yeah, I don't know a better way to describe it than that, Joey. Total freaking meltdown. End of that game. You control the game throughout. Embarrassing, Joey Nichols says. Yeah. Yeah, it's weird because you are going up against the 1 seed. You're on the road. If you'd have said beforehand the Blues lose freaking game 7, double overtime on the road, is that an embarrassing way to end? You're saying no. But to control that game for 58, 59 minutes, to lose in that fashion, God, man, you have to credit Winnipeg though too. Winnipeg brought it, and Connor Hellebuck early on was shaky. You wonder, are they going to pull him? The broadcast on Turner was talking about that, right? I mean, he was steadfast. He picked his game up, and the Jets made the plays when they had to. At the end of that game, the Jets, I mean, they had some good bounces, let's be real. A lot of those goals, let's be real. A lot of deflections, a lot of redirects. But the overtime periods, the Jets were just way, way better than the Blues. Not even close. Not even close. All right. I'm not going to go too long. Joey Nichols, appreciate you watching. I'm going to repost this on YouTube and also Kenny Wallace Media for the podcast for all you guys. Thank you so much. Heck of a year for the Blues, but god dang, what a terrible way. You just can't sugarcoat it. You can't even do the morale happy to be here. You can't when you lose like that. You can look back in a couple days, weeks. You can say overall it was a good season, but when you lose in that fashion, god dang, just an awful way to lose. Joey Nichols says, Blues didn't have any legs in OT. Yeah, whatever it was, the Jets absolutely outplayed them in the overtime periods. Not a shock. I was sitting there just kind of waiting. I was just kind of waiting for the goal to happen. You just got that sense the Blues were not going to win that game after the way they gave up the lead at the end of regulation. So there it is. Overall, good season. We can talk about that more in the future. Hey, look, they got me. I'm not a diehard hockey Blues fan at all. They got me super interested, and it was fun to watch the games for a couple weeks. But look, I'm the type of person, I probably won't watch NHL playoffs anymore. That's how I am as a sports fan. I'm mostly for work covering NASCAR. The Cardinals aren't very good, and I was in it for the Blues, and I was really looking forward to at least another couple weeks of Blues games. That's how I am. I mean, hockey playoffs are unbelievable, but I'm not a diehard hockey fan, so I probably won't watch much of the NHL playoffs now that the Blues are out. But, man, yeah, good season overall. We'll focus on that later, but just a gut-wrenching, heartbreaking way to end it for the St. Louis Blues. Credit to the Winnipeg Jets. And one more time, thanks to my sponsors. You got St. Louis Lawn Care, St. Louis Equipment, Triad Bank celebrating 20 years in the business, Corner Butcher and Chop House over there in the Fenton Valley Park area. Love you all. Thanks for watching Sports Hub STL and Blues Hub STL as well, and catching us on the podcast here, Kenny Wallace Media. Love you all. Peace out, Blues. Dang, Blues. You gave us a fun ride for a couple weeks, but gosh dang, was that just frickin' depressing, heart-wrenching, heartbreaking, gut-wrenching, whatever the word is. I don't even know what to say. I'm kind of speechless. 20 minutes in, I'm kind of speechless. Now I'm just going to get us to 20 minutes. 3, 2. You see, I started at 3 seconds. 3 seconds where the Blues lost the frickin' game 7 with about 3 seconds to go. Awful. All right, see you guys. Love you all.